Hello, everyone. So it seems like you're having a wonderful time, surpassing borders, and that's what we wanted. But can I have your attention, please? It's amazing to see how you're already building connections and meeting each other. I'm Diana Dajer. I'm Executive Director of Policentrico, and I have the pleasure to be here standing with John Otunga from the Sentinel Project. He is a project manager there and has done an amazing work on digital solutions for managing misinformation in many countries in Africa. And we're going to speak to you today about how can we manage misinformation online, so instead of build borders, we can bridge divides. It seems today, as we're carrying around in our cell phones borders and bridges, the cell phones and technology worldwide is helping us both communicate with people all around the globe, but at the same time to spread hate speech or junk news everywhere, also fostering borders between ourselves. And the world is flooded with news of how content spread through social media is being used in conflict-affected areas for better or worse. We were part of a hype during the Arab Spring of how messages in Facebook and Twitter were being spread to build people together so they can build a country that they envision for themselves. Myself, I'm from Colombia, and I experienced after the plebiscite a vote that decided that the agreement with FARC was not approved by citizens. We had a time when we started to get together and act collectively, thanks to social media, to pressure authorities and FARC to renegotiate the agreement so we can move past the conflict with FARC and demobilize the combatants. This is actually a picture of the Plaza de Bolívar. If you were part of Build Peace 2017 in Colombia, you might have been there. And this is a picture of citizens from all over Colombia getting together, trying to push for a better agreement. But the news are not always that good. And we have also worldwide examples of how social media has also been used, for instance, in Myanmar to foster hate speech, or in India to pressure through misinformation and young news for citizens to make decisions against themselves instead of building together, surpassing what divides them. And this just showed us that managing misinformation online is important. This is not something that we should question or not. Content in social media is a reality. It is triggering our emotions. It is affecting our decisions. And we want to explore today in this keynote, how can we understand how that content that is spread through social media is affecting our emotions and decisions and affecting conflict, and what solutions can we use to learn from each other and use social media to work together instead of seeing each other as enemies. There are some solutions already that are happening worldwide, and John will tell us about some work of the Sentinel Project. This, for instance, is an example of fake Facebook junk news aggregator trying to make sense of junk news worldwide affecting elections so patterns are understand from the content spread. But the challenges are much more pervasive. if anyone of you has Instagram and follows Build Posters, he's an artist that is starting to explore the role of deepfake videos, so videos of artificial intelligence that alter reality and basically makes you believe that what the video is doing is actual what the person was saying, but it's not true. So he posted a series of videos, for instance, of Mark Zuckerberg, of Kim Kardashian, of many celebrities as well, faking the content, but the way people speak is really real. So one of the lines of this video posted by Build Posters is, "Whoever controls the data controls the future." And we're in a world where increasing data is being collected by ourselves, and the challenges that deepfake videos and things that we cannot even imagine yet to come are coming to those borders and making them more visible, and making visible invisible frontiers that we might not have noticed before, but trigger us to act and to react against others. So we want to explore today, how does that misinformation interact in those conflict contexts, and more importantly, what initiatives could we use to tackle misinformation in context scenarios? So we, instead of creating deep fakes to divide us and to affect our decisions, we could create projects that make us envision a better future together, where it does not matter what country you're from, but what you can build together to make the world a place for everyone, no matter their nationalities or the socioeconomic background they come from. So in this spirit of collaboration, it's a pleasure to have a keynote speech that is collaborative and that builds on the amazing work that the Sentinel Project has done. So I'm introducing you, John Otunga, who's going to tell us some things that we can learn from the Sentinel Project and that could enlighten us on how to surpass the digital challenges that we're all facing, so we can start building together to bridge divides. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Diana, for the introduction. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is John. I work for the Sentinel Project. Allow me to acknowledge the presence of my executive director, Christopher Tuckwood, in the house. So I come from Kenya, and that's where we started our project. Sentinel basically is an organization that focuses on mass atrocity prevention, assisting communities that are threatened by mass atrocities through direct cooperation with communities in harm's way and the innovative use of technology. In Kenya, we did a project, and we're doing a project called Unahakika, which is a Swahili word for "Are you sure?" I'll talk further about that. We're doing another project in Myanmar called Peaceful Truth, and we're also doing Kijiji cha Amani in DRC Congo, and we are doing Hagige Wahid in South Sudan. That resonates so well with the theme of this conference. So I'll explain a little bit about the project that we started in Kenya called Unahakika. And we decided to do this project in an area called Tana Delta. We did it as a pilot and then a full-fledged project. It's Eastern Kenya, an area where two communities live side by side, pastoralists and farmers. The Orma, basically pastoralists. They're also Muslims, illiterate, majority of them are illiterate, and then we have the Pokomo community, who are majority, a little bit educated. In 2012, there was a massacre in the area. Hundreds were displaced, hundreds were killed, and there was heavy police presence in the area. So we visited the area and we were trying to understand why this conflict happened and how best we can address the situation. So we did a baseline survey and made a physical visit and when we went there, we realized that there are so many factors that are contributing to the violence, including maybe the politics of the day, competition for resources, and we also came to realize that rumors played a very significant role in fueling the violence. So there are rumors about forceful grazing of the pastoralists on the farmer's land, one community stockpiling weapons to go and destroy the other, and all this were playing around to create a lot of tension and mistrust among the two communities. And so after doing the baseline surveys, we found out that majority of the people own mobile phones, and we also are trying to understand how they access information, different types of information, and all that. And after the survey, we also realized that many people knew a lot about, say, national events or issues happening at national level than the neighboring communities. So we realized that there was an information gap, and rumors thrive well through in the information gap. So we developed a project called Una Hakika, which I said is a Swahili word for "Are you sure?" And the goal of the project was to give people access to accurate information from a neutral and trusted source, with a long-term goal of changing their attitudes towards misinformation. So how it works is we crowdsource rumor reports through a text message. We set up a toll-free SMS line where community members subscribe to it, and then we help verify the information through different channels. For example, talking to the local authority. We also talk to other NGOs, and in each community that we were working in at the time, we trained volunteers. We call them community ambassadors. These are people who help us in verifying information about events happening in their local community. Said that, for example, if something happens in village A and someone in village B asks about it, then we can go to our community ambassadors in village A, and they give us the correct information and report back to the person in their village B. And so after verifying, we send back information to the communities using the SMS platform. Accurate information, of course, from a neutral source. So with this, the community members are able now to get access to verified information. How it works on the floor is people subscribe to it. We capture their very basic information like age, sex, and then after capturing the information, they are now free to send in rumors they hear. Anytime they hear rumors, they can send it to the platform. And then when they send in, we receive the information as an organization. We post it to, we have a platform which is online that we've created. It's called Wiki Rumors, that we post all the information received on the SMS platform. We prioritize each and every information depending on the urgency and the ability of maybe the information to trigger violence. So those that can trigger violence maybe in the next 2-3 hours, we call that like high priority rumors. So we work on that expeditiously. And then after verifying, then you're able to send back to the community members. So Hagiga Wahid is the project that we are now doing in South Sudan and Uganda. It's a Juba Arabic word for one truth. So we went to South Sudan because of the violence there. We understand that there is relative peace at the moment, but in real sense, there are lots of tension because of the government having control over some areas and also the rebel groups controlling some other areas. We have the Dinka and the Nuer in constant conflict. And rumors still has a very big role in South Sudan violence. So we have also done a baseline survey in the area. We talked to the community, we've done focus groups, and they've shared with us some of the information that always kind of spike violence. Hagiga Wahid we are doing in South Sudan and Uganda, and potentially going to do it in Kenya refugee camps. And why we thought about Hagiga Wahid is because we realized that there is a very big information gap between the information that flows from, say, South Sudan. The refugees in the camps have no idea what is happening back at home. We have refugees, say, in Kenya, who have no idea about what is happening back at home, and whenever there are rumors, then it leads to tensions and mistrust and all that, and there are rumors that have led to violence, which were not verified, of course. So we decided to do a cross-border kind of transnational project for the first time, which we know we're going to gather lots of lessons from it. And we are now developing a system of information flow. In Juba, we have community ambassadors and organizations that we've trained and handed over the tools of verification to them. They connect to refugees in the refugee camps in Uganda, said that whenever they hear something has happened back at home, they're able now to verify through their counterparts in Uganda, or if refugees hear something is happening in South Sudan, then they can be able to send messages across the border and then get access to accurate information. Most of the rumors in South Sudan are about assassinations, they're about defects of government officials, and now we are looking at the problem of also fake news that is spreading online, and the role of the diaspora community in also spreading false information. And we are saying we need to think through of how now we can also scale up and find solution to the problem of misinformation spread online. So as Hagiga Wahid, as Sentinel Project, what we are doing now is just to contributing to the peace building process in South Sudan in a small way of providing accurate information. And we hope that the transnational network of information is going to be part of the big picture of peace building in South Sudan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John, for sharing with us the amazing work that you have done trying to tackle misinformation and fake news in South Sudan and in Kenya. I will now like to take you through some lessons that the project of the Sentinel Project might bring for all of us as we delve into how can we bridge divides worldwide. And the first lesson that is very powerful is that content spread through social media triggers and shapes emotions of citizens with an influence of their decisions. And there's a question then that we need to ask, is how to trigger those emotions in a way that is positive instead of a way that it's negative. So one of the reasons I like to come to Build Peace and work with Build Up is that because in a world where the mainstream solution for conflict is to buy a bigger gun, which in the digital world means then spread a bigger misinformation and then continuing the war online, what examples such as the ones that John tell us is that instead of spreading bigger rumors, what we need to do is to trigger positive emotions. In this case, asking, "Are you sure?" is triggering an emotion of curiosity, of asking people to reflect before sharing, asking people to discuss instead of immediately believing. So we want to challenge you as we delve into the day of digital borders to think about what can we learn from each other, from the workshops, from the short talks, from the inspiring words from the day, to trigger positive emotions in a world full of hate speech and ways of seeing the other that are negative and confrontational. The second insight is that I'm not sure that today the biggest asset is data. Some people say that it is as valuable or even more valuable than oil. I think that in the peace building world, our biggest asset is not data. Our biggest asset is trust. We could have an amazing system that combines artificial intelligence with human work to combat rumors, but if the people that spread the information that is accurate is not trusted, that is not going to do the trick. We need more trust. And for that, we need to start working together to understand ourselves and to build meaningful connections that help us understand the other and build the empathy that fosters trust. And the third insight is that sometimes in the digital world, we tend to run into solutions. We tend to think, oh, there is a rumor, let's just send the information and then that's going to do the trick. We're talking about millions of messages being spread every day, affecting people's emotions with hate speech, with different content that is very negative to trigger borders. So we need to be very careful on the strategies that we want to undertake in order to tackle that misinformation. So something very valuable from the Sentinel Project is its capacity to pause, speak with the community, understand what's happening, think very carefully, plan, act, and evaluate if what is being done is working. So it's a challenge for us to build those strategies, but it's also a reminder that without those strategies, it's going to be very difficult to surpass the challenges. But thankfully, and Build Peace is an example of this. We can work together to do it in a way that is scalable and more effectively. The Sentinel Project shows us that without working together with the community, with the international community as well, with the people to understand why they're believing the rumors, and between ourselves to build these strategies that work, it's going to be very difficult to tackle misinformation. So as we navigate borders, we just want to remind you that we can go further if we go together. So thank you, John, for giving us the examples. I want to ask you 2 questions, and then we'll give the mic to the audience to both ask questions and also share reflections, so we can continue navigating the examples to learn together. So the first question is, what challenges did you face while designing and implementing Una Hakika, and how did you surpass them?
Thank you very much. There are so many challenges that we faced, and each project presents its unique challenges, but it's interesting that you can do a misinformation management project, and then misinformation starts about the misinformation management project. And that is one of the big challenges that we once faced, where someone in authority went ahead to tell the communities that he has personally deployed a rumor tracker system that will use satellites to track rumor mongers. So that was pure misinformation about our work. So how we manage that is do a lot of training to the community members and get them in focus group discussions, make sure they understand the project very well. There are issues of trust. It's very hard to do misinformation management project without the communities trusting the project itself. So how we overcome this challenge is we first of all look at what approach works where. So there are communities where, for example, in South Sudan, before you go to the grassroots level to reach the community, you have to get approvals from the governor, then the security personnel, then the security introduce you to the director of the I think the states, then they introduce you down to the chiefs, then the chiefs to the community. So once the community realizes that you follow the right procedure to get to them, then they easily accept the project. Then there is also the challenge of cultural barriers, where in some communities, women, for example, are not allowed to even speak or on mobile phones or communicate. So what we do, for example, in Rhino refugee camp, and what we are planning also to do in Kakuma is we are planning to now, we reach out to the community-based organizations that are run by women or women groups, and then use their leaders as the community ambassadors of the project. And I think finally, I'll also talk about one more challenge is high expectations from the community. So there are times when, especially communities that are just emerging from conflicts, these are people who are going through they've gone through a lot of trauma and all that. They're used to physical projects. They want to see what are you bringing on board. And when you go there and tell them, I'm bringing you information management project, then they feel like it's not valuable at all. So there is a time when someone in a focus group just told us, you cannot eat information. Why do we need information? But then along the line, when they come to now know the value of the project after we do the implementation, then they come to appreciate the need of having misinformation management project. Thanks.
Thank you, John. So to recap, misinformation about the project itself, trust, cultural barriers, and the expectations of the people. So the second question that we have as well is, you mentioned the need to have a baseline survey for the initiative, and that you work together very closely with the community to understand if Una Hakika was doing the trick, was working. So there's a challenge for managing online misinformation and for understanding the ecosystem of social media and democracy, about how to understand what the actual effects of the misinformation are, how to evaluate those effects, because it's very easy to have anecdotes about an episode going on here, another one there. But then to put all that together in a way that we understand if something is working or not working is difficult. So how did you evaluate the results of Una Hakika and then the projects in Uganda and in South Sudan? And how did you handle to measure the impact, and what can we learn in creating impact in this kind of initiatives?
So as I mentioned before, each different project that we've done presents a very unique challenge. And that's why it's very important for us to kind of do an baseline survey to understand the context, understand how people access information, understand their sources of trusted information, which methods works well, and which is the reason why I say in Myanmar, our biggest platform is on Facebook. We have a page that has more than 40,000 followers. That will not work well in Kenya. And same, the Kenyan project that we did, Una Hakika, is a little bit different from the one in South Sudan, because in Kenya, we were directly involved in deploying the project. When we went to South Sudan, we realized that the best way to do is to give the tools of misinformation to community-based organizations. Then the community members can run with the project. What we do is just to offer kind of an oversight. So it's important to first engage the community and understand the needs, so you don't kind of impose the project on them, but they be part and parcel of the project. They feel like they were involved, and in the long run, you realize that sustainability comes in because they have a sense of ownership of the project. And evaluation also, we did baseline and we did mid-project survey, and for the case of Una Hakika, we even did the end of project survey. And why we are very keen in doing that is just to make sure that we are able to measure the effectiveness of the project, understand whether the project is relevant, and also kind of measure the impacts of the project. One of our long-term goals, as I mentioned earlier, is just to change people's attitudes towards misinformation, inspire a change in attitude so that people are able to question every information they get. They don't just pass it across without questioning it, and which is why also in the design of the project, we went down to the community and asked in Kenya, how should we name the project? They said, una hakika. We went to South Sudan and were like, how should we name the project? They said, Hagiga Wahid. Yeah.
Thank you, John. So we have understanding the context, building ownership and solution, and then transcending the actual information being spread to building a cultural and individual change in the people involved. So we know that after having heard so much about borders in general and digital borders, you might have had many things that you want to share and also to ask. So we want to take this time of 20 minutes to actually, I think we have half an hour to have an open Q&A. So we'll take some questions and then we'll ask them to John and also if you want for myself, and then we'll go again to pass the mic. So let's hear 3 or 4 questions first. Is someone that wants to speak? So one over there. Yeah.
Thank you.
If you could also introduce yourself and say where you're coming from, that would be lovely.
Sure. Thank you so much. My name is Johanna Damberg. I'm social development specialist in the World Bank, working mostly in West Africa. So I found it very interesting to hear what you have done in East Africa, and already have many ideas how that could actually probably be duplicated in some of our projects. So what I would like to know more of, I found very interesting in the beginning, you mentioned the information flow and how you crowdsource gossip, or how you crowdsource information that you then validate and then bring back to the communities. So thinking about South Sudan, for example, where even text messaging, and not even to speak about internet, poses a huge challenge. I'm wondering how you do it, especially in rural settings, how you get this information, who is actually then the one verifying it. So I guess this would have to be nominated community members, committees, how do you train them? So I would be very interested to hear a bit more about this process and how really do you get it back then to the communities, especially in settings where communication is a huge challenge.
Thank you. Someone else would like to?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Vigia. I work for Resolve Network in Eastern Congo, and this is such a great project. I'm very interested to hear about the ambassadors. How did you build confidence in them that they're actually in such stratified communities, how can you build confidence of the population at large in those ambassadors? And then how did you address social and ethnic diversity amongst the ambassadors? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Someone else?
Thank you very, very much. I'm Marta Llanos from Peru. And I do peace building with very young children. We start at 4 years of age, and I believe you could be a peace ambassador at that age. I wonder, from the perspective of a small children's population, if you have had some experience, because just listening to you, it sounded very interesting, how through, because we do peace building through art, how through art we could work with children on simulations, exercises, games, by which you contribute to a kind of critical thinking that will be that when you listen conversations, that when you yourself express yourself, how you manage that situation of finding the truth, what is the truth, how do you build trust, and how sometimes very trustable, apparently trustable people are just very intelligent strategies for making people to follow. So how can you project this situation thinking on a little smaller population? Thank you much.
Thank you, Marta. I think we can have these 3 questions first and then do another round. Yeah, we'll do more rounds. First, maybe these are Very insightful questions. So let's answer. We have still half an hour, so we'll okay in time. So we have 3 questions. The first one is how to crowdsource misinformation, especially in rural settings. The second one is how's the process to build a network of ambassadors and build confidence in them and have a diversity range of ambassadors. And the third one is how to engage with the small children, especially in building skills such as critical thinking.
All right, so very good questions. Thank you very much for asking. How it works in setups with poor internet connections like South Sudan, and more especially where the government is very strict on who passes what information, very strict on journalists and all that, is we've built a network of the community volunteers I've talked about. And what we do is, because it was a tested concept that we had already tried in Kenya, we noticed that in a rural setup, very few people have basic feature phones, which most likely it's only SMS and voice that works. So we're able to train them how to send in messages through. If you're not able to type, maybe there are those who are illiterate, they can make a call. And these are toll-free calls and SMS. And another thing is the community ambassadors, the few that we select, they are able now to kind of be the human face of the project. Said that in areas where very few people have mobile phones, we select an ambassador who owns the phone. So I think you also asked about the training that we give, mostly about critical thinking. We train them on how to capture rumors in the area, and we tell them that obviously rumors is not, say, any other information that you hear which is true. We train them what rumors are, and also now train them how to help in verifying those rumors. How we deal with the social and ethnic balance of the ambassadors. So in Kenya is very different, because when we went to the communities, we were free to we advertised, post for volunteers, they applied, we looked at the different qualifications, ethnic, religious, and all that, and then we selected the community ambassadors. When we went to South Sudan, it was very different, because even any meeting we had a spy from the government coming to the meeting. And so what we did there is we talked to the authorities. They were able to propose a few names of youths who deal with peace building. And then these are people who are trusted by the community members, and then we selected them as community ambassadors. How to engage children in the project. So far, I can say we've not done any project specifically that focus on children, because we deal with technologies and they might not have access to mobile phones. But we've seen cases where, for example, very recent in Kakuma refugee camps, where 2 South Sudanese boys fought. It led to a fight where the youth joined in. And after the youth joined in, it was a fight between the Dinka and Nuer in the whole refugee camp. So it is very important to think through maybe ways of how we can incorporate the children, but basically maybe through school clubs where they can join the peace clubs and train them about peace.
Thank you, John. Let's do another round of questions. I know that there were many people that wanted to speak. So there's one over here, over there first. They were from the other round, and then 2 in the middle. Yeah.
Hi, John. Iman Sherbini. I'm an Egyptian journalist. I do investigations with the Sudan archives. So we have similar methodology when it comes to Una Hakika or Haqiq Wahed. I was wondering that when, let's say, there is a video that you're trying to verify, you use data-based verification tools, for example, and sometimes it takes ages to verify that. How does it play around if you don't get it out in time? Let's say in the case of Salva Kiir's death, the rumor itself, it caused a lot of chaos and trouble and clashes between South Sudanese. So I was wondering how you handle that.
Thank you. We also had two in the middle.
Yeah, so my name is Shimi Braha, and I work with Life and Peace Institute in Addis Ababa. I was also interested in hearing a little bit more about the verification process and how that works and what types of information you use, or what are your information sources, and sort of how you go about that process, and when you feel comfortable sharing that information back out to the community, and how you approach that.
Hi, thank you for sharing your project. My name's Beth. I'm a student of peace here at the Croc School. And I had a question, you touched on it briefly, but how do you integrate women into your project, especially in areas where kind of, just how do you kind of integrate gender into what you're doing?
Thank you. Perhaps we can round it up in these three questions and then pass it along again. So we have three questions. The first one is how to speed up the verification system. The second one is how does the verification process works more broadly. And the third one is how to integrate women in the projects.
Thank you very much for the questions. As I think I understood, you were asking how we deal with videos, and it's very hard to mostly verify whether a video is manipulated or not, right? So at the moment, we've not advanced so much into looking at videos and pictures and all that spreading online. Right now, we are focusing on the basic rumors, channels, and that's why we basically look at we use SMS and voice. We only use Facebook in Burma and Myanmar. And I can say it's something that we're discussing on how we can now start advancing into maybe looking at videos and all that. But I'll just answer it like in the event that we now start tackling fake videos and pictures, what we'll do is maybe have someone sit in a place like Nairobi with good network, and then the communities down in the grassroots, if they see any video they want, then they can push it to us in a place where the network is good. We have to verify and send it back to them. And then the verification process involves trying to get information from different sources. So for example, as I mentioned, we talk to our community ambassadors firsthand because they are on the ground. We talk to NGOs like Red Cross or UNHCR that works in that area. We talk to the local authorities, that is the government. And then we also do our own maybe physical visit to the site. And so somehow in between the different sources of information, we're able to land on the truth. So that's basically how our the verification process works. Then I think you also asked about, what was it? Oh yeah, there is something you mentioned about how we dispel the information, right? And choose how to dispel it, right? So sometimes dispelling rumors is very dangerous because you can dispel information and at the end it ends up spiking violence. So we have to be very sensitive about how we package the SMS or the message you are sending back to the community. And the good thing with SMS is that unlike, say, community radio, you can easily target one community. So we group the contacts into villages or towns and all that, so that if, say, it's a rumor that only comes from community X and we don't want it to spread further, so we can just target that SMS to that community. But we are very sensitive on how we say. We cannot just say, a Dinka was killed by a Nuer. Yes, it's true, the Dinka was killed. What we do, we say, yes, it's true. However, there is action A, B, and C that has been taken maybe by the authorities. So that gives people the cooling instead of just reporting directly. Then how we engage women, I mentioned, is that we work with women groups. There are those maybe that were formed for purposes of economic empowerment or other things. So we just go through the group leaders, engage with them, they introduce us to the group members, and then we work with them. Yeah.
Thank you, John. Well, in the spirit of also surpassing digital borders, we were wondering if there were online questions or comments as well. There are not yet, but I want to encourage the audience that is also online to make a question or a comment if they want. Is there any other people in the audience that wants to?
Hello, my name is Ren Elheim, a graduate student at Stanford University. I was wondering about, so you said you're mostly focused on SMS and voice, and you mentioned the context of Myanmar, where Facebook has come in very quickly and changed the way that people interact with each other and get information. And I was wondering, in Sudan, South Sudan, or in Kenya, how quickly do you think the information pathways have changed? Do you think that you're stepping into a situation where rumors are spreading in different ways than they have historically, or is this a new way to address an old problem?
Hello everyone, my name is Camilo Navarro. I'm a systemic thinking and system dynamics professor in both Universidad de los Andes and Sergio Arboleda from Colombia. I just want to congratulate you for the work you're doing, and I was actually, as a student, when I was doing my undergrad, part of that gathering in the, yes, that you show in the pictures. And as an engineer, I work with Engineers Without Borders. I have been doing some work with the little kids in Colombian schools, but private and public. And so the name of this work is the Liga del Agua. So the little kids came up with the name, inspired by the Justice League. They created the Water League. And my question is on how do you think these programs should be replicated? When we create what we think to be success programs, we came up with so many difficulties try to replicate them in different places. I want to know how are you facing this multiplication of your work?
Thanks. Is there an online question? No? Okay. So, yeah.
Hi, Caroline Bailey from engineering here at USD. I'm even in engineering, which might surprise people in this room, the information is never black and white. And I'm curious, especially when it comes to social and political information. When I'm working in contexts of conflict around mining in communities, there's never a black and white response. And I'm trying to understand how information or misinformation, which seems binary, is dealt with in the work that you do.
Thanks. So we have 3 questions. The first one is, what are the changes of the information pathways that you have found during the project and in time? The second one is how to replicate the program. And the third one is how to navigate the grays of information in a binary world.
Thank you very much for the questions. So the channels, honestly, they are very different and the world is changing very fast. As you rightly point out that in Myanmar, mostly Facebook peaks so fast and the spread is, it's very easy to spread misinformation online. It's very different from Kenya, which is also kind of coming up. Initially, most misinformation was spreading just by word of mouth, especially in the rural setup. And then with the advent of smartphones, then people started now spreading a lot of false information on WhatsApp and Facebook. And the same applies to South Sudan, where majority, okay, there is a minority who have mobile phones, smartphones, and the basic feature phones, and there are those who totally don't have phones. So it varies in different places. However, the problem is more or less the same, which is why I think it's very important to do kind of an evaluation before you do the project, just to understand which channel will work best where. And replicating the project, we've had a lot of challenges because we cannot assume because it worked in Kenya, it will also work in South Sudan or other places. So like even the entry points, just how we entered Kenya, it's very different from South Sudan and also Burma. So I don't know, you wanted to understand the challenges we face in replicating, or I missed the point? Sorry.
How could you replicate effectively?
How to replicate effectively is just by doing the evaluation. That's the bottom line. Understanding the context and which tool works best where. Yeah. Yeah, so I can also say that misinformation management still go back to saying it's very context-based. So different areas having different types of misinformation and dealing with them differently. You go to DRC, their misinformation is on issues to do with the public health. Right now you come to Kenya, we have a vaccine against cervical cancer. The misinformation spreading us on cervical cancer. You go to South Sudan, it's about violence and politics and assassinations. So it's very context-based, each area with its unique ways of dealing with the misinformation.
Well, thank you very much, Sean. Is there any pressing question or? Yes, please, Marta.
Thank you very much, because listening to the questions, very good questions and a wonderful project. I would like to share very briefly three aspects that has come on this very beautiful keynote presentation. First of all, in the world of children like very much digital games, okay? Now, what information are we given? I think that's also a danger. I have seen that in many of, thanks God they are changing, but many of the games for children are very clear on the having an objective, a north, so final objective. But in order to get to that objective, you have to burn, you have to fight, you have to throw out things. So what is the information given? That in order to succeed an objective, you don't use peace, you use violence. Second thing, trust. I was in a project in which it was a literacy project, and the women became very friendly to each other, sharing their situations. And one woman shared how unhappy she was because she was subject of domestic violence. And so one day the whole team, I mean all the friends in the class decided to take the justice in their hands. You know, they waited in a corner in the night, they didn't go to the literacy class, and they really, how can I say, smash is not the word, they beat the man, right? The next Friday, all mullahs were saying on the Friday gathering that the Quran says that to go to these classes is forbidden. Education is forbidden. You see? So that was how you use also the trust on a key person on this, and then you changed. We have to go and find out the biggest authority on the Muslim church, and they said, no, the Quran never have said that. But you see, it was the trust of those key people. And the third thing, Disney announces a game called Baby Einstein. Baby Einstein came with the saying on the big boss, when your child plays with this baby Einstein, you are going to have a genius child. And 4 wonderful young people in Boston won. They never told how much was the final deal, but they sued Disney, 4 young people sued Disney because Disney was lying to everyone, saying because no one can become a genius by playing a game. So this is fascinating to see how this information not only goes into the, I mean, it's more dangerous into the digital world, but also in the overall how we channel the information that we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marta, for reminding us the importance also of the intergenerational borders, that sometimes we forget. There are many generations that are growing with this digital the digital world being their bread and butter, and we need to do a better world also, engaging them. I saw hands raised here. We're about, if you want, go ahead, and then John will answer and do closing remarks, and we'll wrap it up.
How can people in the software development community help? Thanks.
Thank you. That's a great question. How people in the software world help. In the software development world.
Oh, thank you very much. That sounds good. So right now, the world is advancing. We need apps. People are now moving from basic phones to smartphones, and we don't know what will come after smartphones. So software developers can help us. We have an open source software called WikiRumors, for example, which was developed by our software team that help us kind of in mapping the flow of misinformation, the origins and all that. And we're also looking at maybe coming up with an app that can be useful in other areas. So it's just an area that has great potential that maybe needs to be looked into. Yes.
Thank you, John. So would you like to have a closing remark before we wrap up the keynote?
Sure. So thank you very much for your audience. I'll just like to wind up by saying that a few key lessons that we've learned so far is that misinformation management should be timely, very fast, get the wrong information, verify and respond back as soon as possible, should be sensitive, know like the needs of the community, how do you package the information back, it should be targeted, it shouldn't kind of spread the false information further. So it's worth having a focus on certain maybe population. And finally, it should be responsive. Most people do projects that are just one way. They either just receive information, but they don't give feedback to the people who send the information. So it's worth making sure that it's responsive. Then finally, I'll say, Hagiga Wahidu na Hakika and the other projects, these are just projects we are doing and we are learning from them. They're not like perfect projects, but we keep on improving them as we grow as an organization. And in case I've not answered any questions sufficiently, feel free to talk to me outside there. It's very hard to answer questions here. I'm trying. And thank you very much for your audience.
Thank you very much, John. That was very insightful, and hopefully we can continue collaborating together, building trust and bridging divides along the day and these 3 amazing days of Build Peace. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to take these?